Well, I think there's been a great deal of fear-mongering with regard to this question, particularly in the mainland press, which has been repeatedly saying that these protests are going to impact on Hong Kong's economy, its stability, its prosperity. And I think this has largely been in an effort to kind of sway what people call the silent majority in Hong Kong, with the idea that if public opinion sways against the protesters who've been enjoying quite a lot of positive opinion in Hong Kong, particularly after they were tear gassed by the Hong Kong police on Sunday. I think that the statistics, though, they don't really back this up. I mean, yes, with regard to tourism and retail, I think that there will be some negative effects. I mean, just having this many protesters out in the streets blocking transport links and access to shops is going to have an impact, and particularly lost days at work as well, as people spend the night on the streets protesting. I mean, Hong Kong's tourism and retail sector account for 10% of their economy. So this is not to say that the impact won't be in some way significant. But one tourism company in particular noted that they've only noticed a 7% drop in the number of mainland tourists coming from the mainland on the China National Day week. Now, a 7% drop is not that significant, I think. And there's been no notable decrease in the number of tourists coming from elsewhere in the world. I imagine a few people have probably cancelled their trips, but largely speaking, I think if these protests die down, which is not necessarily certain, the tourism sector will regain its previous position, and particularly I think retail will as well. I don't think we're going to see a situation where mainlanders stop wanting to come to Hong Kong to buy their luxury goods. I think that particularly seen as most discussion of the Hong Kong protests has been blocked in the mainland, I don't think we'll see a discernible impact in that respect. Well, I think with regard to whether Beijing will make concessions, I don't think the protesters should be too optimistic. But to be honest, I don't think many of them are naive enough to think that Beijing will back down. As CY Leung, the chief executive, himself mentioned in his press conference on Thursday, they're very rational people. I think that if you look at the discourse amongst the protesters, a lot of them have moved from early in the protests to be talking about universal suffrage and issues pertaining to the Chinese Communist Party, but then they moved more onto domestic issues, and I think that we'll be looking more now towards a domestic solution to these problems, partly because it's so unlikely Beijing will back down. Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, has been on a roll of late, getting rid of an awful lot of corrupt officials, as they've been referred to in the Chinese press. I think that he's an incredibly strong leader, and I think that he wouldn't want to come across as weak with regard to Hong Kong. The mainland have buckled before mine to Hong Kong's demands. Back in 2003, when thousands of people took to the streets to protest the controversial Article 23, which was a anti-subversion law. There was the mainland government backed down, as did the Hong Kong government back then. And I think that one thing that will be definitely on the minds of the Chinese leadership will be Taiwan. The one country, two systems framework was originally deemed a possible solution to the one China issue. However, it's lost its appeal in Taipei of late, particularly since the protest started. President Ma Ying-jeou has said that one country, two systems will never really work for Taiwan. But he's also made it very clear that relations between Taiwan and the mainland, which are of utmost importance to Beijing, will be negatively impacted if the Hong Kong protests are ended with force or violence.